And the only thing I think that we have as an option is to come back to God, come back to sanity, come back to bringing, at the bare minimum, build nuclear families. To me, and I think this is going to take a lot of energy for the people who have the capacity, but I think the brave warrior types amongst the men that are remaining out here, the people who know how to cook and know how to hunt, know how to cook meat, know how to eat, know how to take care of other people, know how to make money, y'all dudes got to have multiple wives and a whole lot of kids and create some armies, train your kids in martial arts, multiple languages, self-sufficiency.
Tactical.
Go buy out some land in Wyoming, North Dakota, Montana, South Dakota, all these places where there's really a low population center. Build big fortresses, work with communities, work with the local government, get into local races. Try to get as many of the sheriff positions all across the country as possible. Sheriff is a very, very powerful position in local government. And have faith in God and build communities around that. And I think that's where our real power lies. Going through the system, voting and doing all this stuff. I mean, look, the Trump phenomenon was great while it lasted. I think a lot of us expected a lot more out of it. But, this is an entrenched power structure. I mean, John F. Kennedy talked about how intermingled they were. And now when you consider everything is on autopilot when it comes to the economy and the media and everything else, where they can just put out, one memo from a synagogue and it goes all across the planet. I mean, that's the kind of situation that we're dealing with. So ultimately, it's not going to be, going through their system, because they're just going to flip the votes. We just witnessed it. I mean, Sleepy Joe Biden didn't even come out of his basement. He used to have 10 people show up at his rally, all masked out, wearing masks so far separated from each other, and they were all sitting in cars honking to make noise. And Trump had 60, 70,000 people at a rally. Yeah. So, I mean, the phenomenon is we're in the theater of the absurd. Everything is completely absurd. And one of the things about these people throughout ancient history is that they always bite off more than they can chew ultimately. And that riles up the Gentiles, and the Gentiles tend to react. So we are expecting that reaction imminently, but what it is going to take, I think, is unity on the basis of God. And, at the end of the day, we're going to have to be able to outline who the enemy is. The enemy hates Jesus. That's a very simple way to do it. It doesn't take, a lot of people really can't hate on Jesus. Jesus was a pretty nice guy. If you look at the history, there's almost nothing you can say that was bad about Jesus at all. And so for someone to vehemently hate him, say he's burning in feces in hell, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of easy to isolate those individuals.
I think it's also interesting that for Muslims as well, because there's this false narrative that Islam wants to chop off the head of anybody who's a quote-unquote infidel. Because we grew up with this. I grew up post 9/11 specifically, constantly seeing these different texts get taken out of context and used. And I can point to specific ones where I can go in and give you the context of what actually that specific verse was alluding to at that time period. And they made Muslims sound like these radical extremists that were out to persecute and chop off the heads of all Christians and everybody who's a non-Muslim, which was complete bullshit. If you actually take a look at the Quran, and I always make this case, the Quran is 2/3 biblical. The Quran mentions Jesus and Moses more times than Muhammad. There's an entire chapter on Jesus. It's called Jesus, or Yahshua, or Isa in Arabic, right? There's an entire chapter on Mary and the virgin birth. There's an entire chapter on Mary's family, Al-Imran. The Quran, Jesus, and we believe in the second coming of Jesus, by the way. He is going to come down again. So we still have that in common. He's going to come down and he's going to basically slay the Antichrist. And I know that the different sects of Islam probably have different interpretation of that. But for the most part, we're very close with our Christian brothers and sisters. I grew up overseas. A lot of Christian Arabs. Never had a problem with them. They live happily. They're treated very well. The only places that were politically persecuting Islamic clergymen who were calling out the corrupt leadership of Middle East countries was in the Middle East. You'd have a Friday sermon, and let's say an imam would be talking about a corrupt leader or corrupt politicians. They would go to jail. In America, you can say whatever the fuck you want about politicians. You're not going to go to jail. So far. So And the Islamic extremism truly comes from and hails from certain places like Saudi Arabia, which is an infestation of rodents run amok that have politicized
Well, they
Islam.
were picked, and it seemed arbitrarily so, but they come
Oh, they were
from
selected,
a
and
long
they're-
line of crypto Jewish families.
So Al Saud
Al Saud.
were annexed, and they were actually exiled to Cyprus by the Ottoman Empire. And then they were brought in by the British post World War II. All of that is it's all been socially engineered and manufactured. And until we can wake up, and I thought you had a beautiful segment right there talking about going back to God, and that's why I really appreciate Gab and I appreciate Andrew Torba and what he's doing, because he understands the game, and he's creating a parallel economy, parallel universe in a way, parallel society where we can bring back faith and not live under the boots of these oppressors that are constantly attacking Jesus, constantly attacking white people, constantly creating chaos and sowing division between everybody else, and pitting people against each other. And now they've taken all the minorities, put them in one umbrella and said, go against this group. So